Guys, I am tired of holding my tongue. It is time for Christians to speak up and let our voices be heard. Hi, my name is Sheridan. If you're new here, I run a faith-based channel, and I just felt like it was time for me to come out of the closet and tell you guys why I will be voting for President Trump in the elections November 5th. Which, before I get into this, I just want to give y'all a little stat based on research conducted by the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University. It's estimated that 104 million people who fall under the category of people of faith, of which 41 million are Christians, will not cast ballots this election. 41 million Christians are not planning on voting. Wake up! Do you see the direction this country is headed? To not vote is to vote for injustice. To not vote is to vote for unrighteousness. To not vote is to vote against the future of the children of this nation. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about my background. I have master's degrees in political science and in social work. I love Jesus. I love this country. I love the nations. I love serving marginalized populations, both in America and around the world. I love people, and I want to stand up for those who are underrepresented. And I think that's why I care so much about politics, because I want to serve those who are marginalized. And when I was 21 years old, I was in grad school, and my first ever class in my political science program was the presidency. It was all about the office of the presidency. And we did a mock election. This was back in 2016. This was June 2016. We did a mock election to vote on who was going to be president. And your options were either Trump or Clinton, and you had to write down their name and pass it in. I thought this was anonymous, and so I wrote down Trump, and the professor ended up counting up the votes, and in this class of students, there were 2 people that voted for Trump, and the rest voted for Clinton. And the professor said, okay, the 2 of you who voted for Trump, tell me why you voted for Trump. And this lady, who was like significantly older than I am, she started laughing, and she goes, I knew nobody else was an idiot enough to vote for Trump, so I just wrote his name down as a joke. I wanted to crawl under my chair. And then the professor said, okay, who was the other one that voted for Trump? And I shyly raised my hand as a 21-year-old Christian conservative, and that began my 2-year journey in grad school. I was the only Christian conservative in either of my majors, and I was questioned, I was mocked, I was ridiculed, I was publicly berated for my beliefs. Sometimes people were respectful, but a lot of times I felt very alone and very silenced, both for being a Christian and for being a conservative. And I want you to understand, I don't have hard party affiliations. I'm not like the biggest Republican Party supporter there ever was. I want to vote based on my biblical values. And if ever there is a party that does not align with my biblical values, I have no problem leaving that party. Like, it's not do or die for a party affiliation. I serve the kingdom of heaven, and so I vote based on that. Okay, so let's talk about the political candidates, Vice President Harris or President Trump. Y'all, we first need to say this. When we are voting for president, we're not voting for who we would like to go out on a date with for Valentine's Day. We're voting for what kind of country we want to live in. We're voting for the future of this nation, for our children and our children's children. And so we have to look beyond things like personality and aesthetics and communication style, and we have to actually get into the bones of policy and value systems and ideology, because there is a very clear difference. It's worth saying up front, there are things about President Trump's personality I don't like. There are things about Vice President Harris's personality I don't like. There are things that are questionable about each of their pasts. I mean, if you want to look into ethics and morality and just decisions they've made in the past. But the thing is, I'm looking at who is going to put the policies into place that will preserve this great nation. And there is a clear distinguishment. So I want you to know that it's okay that there's not a perfect candidate. We got to look at the candidate's political trajectory and vote based on that. So let's look at these areas. It's not just voting on one issue. Christians, we've been known to vote on one issue, but I want you to know There are a number of issues you're voting on here. All right, I never thought I'd be saying this, but I'm voting Republican because I care about women's rights. Let's talk about it. You know, once upon a time, the feminist movement really was advancing women's rights, but now the feminist movement is like anybody can be a woman, and you know, there really is no distinguishment between men and women. So we're gonna let men compete in sports, and we're gonna encourage children in the education system to change their genders if they want to. And oh, by the way, we're gonna strip parents of their rights to be able to protect their children from mutating themselves. And so if a parent tries to intervene when a child is trying to permanently alter their body, this is ludicrous. Y'all, since when are we okay with saying a man is a woman and a woman is a man? Can we just stop and say, even if you do not subscribe to a faith, this is stupid. We have to call right, right, and wrong, wrong. Left does not become right. Up does not become down. Like, there is not your truth or my truth. There is the truth, and we have to call a spade a spade. And so I'm voting Republican because, to be honest, the Democratic Party doesn't care about supporting women's rights. They don't care about protecting the children in the school system. Children are not old enough to vote. They're not old enough to drink. They're not old enough to get a tattoo. And yet we're protecting their rights to permanently destroy their body. What you're actually doing is neutering them. You are cutting off their reproductive organs, and you're giving them hormones at such a young age so that it prevents puberty, so that they are never actually able to, when they are an adult, reproduce. So if my child is 10 years old and they decide from like 10 to 16 that they want to go through a gender change process, and I live in, say, California, my child gets to do that. But guess what? When my child is 25 and decides, you know what, that was a bad season in my life, I've decided I actually want to revert back to my old gender and start a family, they won't be able to. So we have to really, really, really go back to the foundations of logic and say we must protect these children because their brains are still developing until the age of 25. Therefore, we're not going to strip the parent of their rights and let the child make a life-altering decision before their brain is fully developed. So y'all, I'm voting Republican to protect women in sports. I'm voting Republican to protect children's rights and protecting their development. And I'm voting Republican to protect parental rights. Let's talk about the border. Whether you like it or not, every country needs a secure border. We have to have systems in place that protect the law and order of our country and also protect the customs, culture, traditions of our society. You know, I find it really fascinating that there's a bunch of young people who just think that America is the most racist society ever and that we don't like immigrants and that we don't let refugees in. If you want to talk reality, fact check, America allows in more immigrants than any other country on earth. Pew Research says the United States has long had more immigrants than any other country. In fact, the U.S. is home to 1/5 of the world's international migrants. These immigrants come from just about every country in the world. According to a 2024 World Population Review, the United States is home to the highest number of immigrants in the world. An estimated 50.6 million people in the United States. That's a bit more than 15% of the total population of our 331.4 million were born in a foreign country. So do not say that America is this racist society that does not let in immigrants. Oh, we hate immigrants. No, that's crap. America lets in more immigrants than any other country in the world. But you know, there's this thing where we have to have balance. If we allow laws to be broken in one area, what's to say laws won't be broken in another area? You want to know the number one people group that hates illegal immigration? legal immigrants, because they put in the time, the money, the blood, sweat, and tears to come into this country legally, and it's being messed up by those who do not honor due process. We have to have due process for security reasons. You want to talk about the drug cartel, you want to talk about human trafficking, you want to talk about terrorism. When we don't have secure borders, all of those things are escalating, and then these little bitty towns are being flooded with way too many people, and they're not able to meet the supply, the needs of this level of people. But also, there's something that when you get into sociology, you'll learn that there is balance. You can only let so many people into a country at a time in order to maintain the language, custom, culture, and traditions of a society. Don't get me wrong, I am not against letting in refugees. I love that we welcome refugees. But if you want to maintain your customs and your traditions and your culture as a society, you can't let way too many in at once. It has to be a certain percentage so that you can actually receive them and maintain your identity as a country. So we need border security. Amen. All right, let's talk about abortion. Stop, hear me out. Whether you're a Christian or not, you should care about this. Here's why. Since 1973, when Roe v. Wade was passed, 63.5 million babies have been aborted. 20 million black babies have been aborted. Y'all, that's an entire generation. You actually, as a nation, you have to maintain a certain birth rate to be able to maintain the population of a nation. And the only reason that the United States is maintaining a stable birth rate is because of the Hispanic population. The white and black birth rates have actually gone down because of abortion. You know, I recently had a dream, and in this dream, God spoke to me and he said, witchcraft is the shedding of innocent blood. Well, what is abortion? That is simply the shedding of innocent blood. So anywhere that you see a political agenda that is pushing abortion, there's actually the spirit of witchcraft behind that. But even beyond that, you judge a nation by how it treats the most vulnerable populations. And so it can't just be about abortion, but it does include this. The most vulnerable populations include the unborn, those in prison, single moms, those with special needs, the young, the elderly. How are we treating our most vulnerable populations? We have to honor all of human life. All human life is sacred in the eyes of God. And so you need to know, actually no presidential candidate in this election is fully pro-life, but President Trump is a lot more pro-life than Vice President Harris. And I actually did a whole video series going through the academic research on abortion. I will include that at the end of this video. But if you're like me, at one point I was like, yeah, I'm kind of pro-life, but I'm not 100% pro-life. But over time, God actually really convicted me and started showing me that he values life, and that if I value what God values, I need to value life. And I became super pro-life, not as a political statement, but because I realized God hates the shedding of innocent blood. So when you're voting, realize you are voting. One party wants to literally put Roe v. Wade back in place. In one party, and Trump has already said he wanted the states to have power to decide, which, if you don't know, abortion is actually on the rise because you're having abortion methods sent in the mail and you're having people cross state lines. So each state is deciding whether they are going to allow abortion or not and to what extent they will allow it. So you need to vote because this is the future of our country. An entire generation is missing because of abortion. This matters whether you're a Christian or not. Okay, I'm going to switch gears and talk about geopolitics because America needs to regain respect on an international stage. We are in what's called a unipolar world right now, which means one country is the leader of the free world. But according to the rise and fall of nations, geopolitics, over centuries, what happens is we leave that unipolar world and become a multipolar world where suddenly it's no longer one country that's leading the free world, it's multiple countries duking it out to see who's going to be the next world leader. And then it becomes a bipolar world where there's two countries who are leading and they're kind of fighting, and then eventually we enter a unipolar world moment again. Why this matters is because America is the leader of the free world right now, but not for much longer. Whenever that is no longer the case, we actually will probably enter World War III, which is where a number of nations are basically duking it out to rise to power. So let's look at the world leaders on the international stage. In addition to America, we have China, we have Russia, we have Iran, and we have North Korea. What we're seeing right now is wars and rumors of wars, and we're seeing some of those bully nations coming together in partnerships, and that's really concerning. And here's where it matters when you're voting for president. You know, unfortunately, the current presidential administration does not have the respect on the national stage. They're not able to keep the bullies in check. But one thing President Trump did really well when he was president is he's a strong leader, and he was able to keep those international bullies in check. So when you're in a unipolar moment, there's actually peace in the world. But then when you go into a multipolar season, that's when you have a lot of war and chaos. And so we need President Trump back in office because he actually keeps those bully nations in check, and we're able to hold back the tide from World War just a little bit longer. I'm not an expert on this. I do know a little bit about it, but I'm just saying I don't feel confident that Vice President Harris has the strong enough personality to really be able to keep those leaders in check. But I have seen with my own eyes that President Trump can do that. And so that's why I'll be voting for Trump, because he will bring respect back to America on the international stage. And we need that for the sake of peace. All right, let's talk ideologies. The Democrat Party, whether they acknowledge it or not, they are pursuing globalism and socialism, neither of which are ideologies I subscribe to. You guys, I have been in socialist Europe and I've been in communist Asia. I've seen up close and personal what these ideologies do to a nation. But it's only in a land of freedom where people can reach their highest potential professionally, economically, and spiritually. I'm tired of my generation complaining that America sucks and they wish America was more like Europe. I wish y'all could spend as much time overseas as I have, because then you would realize the gift that America is. It's only in a democratic republic with a foundation of capitalism and personal liberties, which include free speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, and petition. It's only in a land that has that freedom where you can reach your highest potential. Every other country I've been to, in one way or another, their government is squashing on their human potential because they don't have freedom to live life like they want to. So you have to understand, socialism is not going to serve our country. It's only going to bring demise to our country, and it's only going to limit your potential. Also, as a personal side note, one party waves the American flag and says the Pledge of Allegiance, and the other party stomps on the flag and mocks our nation. Y'all, wake up. We may have problems. Obviously we do, but no country is without problems. But if you truly travel and get out there and see the world, you will realize there truly is no nation like America. And it's because we were founded on Judeo-Christian values. So I honor our country. Most of the men in my family have served in the United States military, and some still are. I value the sacrifices that have gone into protecting the freedom and liberties of this country. It is something to fight for. So I absolutely will wave the flag with pride, and I will say the Pledge of Allegiance, because God made this nation great, and we have to protect the greatness of this country. I was not too long ago, I was in a country that was part of the former Soviet Union, and this person said, you know, every time we meet an American, we know that they are an American because of the sparkle in their eyes. You guys have grown up in freedom. You don't know what it's like to live in captivity, and there's just this freedom literally in your eyes that I don't see in Slavic people. And that really struck me. We only know freedom as a nation, but so many other nations on earth do not know that. So we have to defend our freedoms while we still can. All right, let's talk about government overspending. It's just like a person overspending, but on a huge scale. If you constantly max out your credit cards, you are going to go into financial collapse. So we have to get control of our national budget, stop overspending. The national debt is crippling our country, but the interest on the debt is really the kicker here. So here's one thing you can't disagree with. Trump understands finance and economics. He is a true businessman, and whether you like him or not, you can look at his life and realize He gets finance. He gets economics. And what's really cool, I watched the interview recently between Elon Musk and President Trump. Trump has hinted at bringing Elon Musk into politics to help clean things up. And P.S., if you didn't know, Elon Musk is the richest person in the world. So I'm just saying I will trust them more to clean things up economically in our government than I would trust the other administration. And lastly, Christians, this one's for you. Alliance with Israel. It's no surprise to anyone that Israel is at war right now. The rise of Nazism and anti-Semitism is insane. Do we not remember the Holocaust? So for those who are Christians, I just want to remind you, to serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we must aim to serve and protect Israel and Jews around the world. This is not a religious statement. This is a statement of fact. The most persecuted people group of all human history are the Jews, the nation of Israel. And there's an obvious reason behind that. God made a covenant with Abraham back in the Old Testament and said that through him all the nations on the earth will be blessed. So God's first covenant was with the nation of Israel through Abraham's line. So the fact that they are the most persecuted people group in all of human history just goes to show that this is a spiritual battle. And as Christians, we must protect the Jews. If you are a Christian, you follow the God of the Jews. And so alliance with Israel comes into our voting because Trump is very much pro-Israel. So I just want to say that you have to be mindful of that. The nation of Israel needs the right to protect themselves. All right. First Amendment rights. Right to practice your religion, right to free speech, right to petition. This also gets into like the right of protest and things like that. Y'all, this has been challenged so much. We do not have anything if we don't have the freedom of speech. People and organizations and churches and businesses are being canceled, they're being sued, they're being persecuted because of free speech. Enough is enough. It's not hate speech just because you disagree. Hate speech is literally hateful. Free speech is different. We have to stop canceling entire businesses and organizations, suing the crap out of people just because they have a different opinion than you. Y'all, grow up. It is time to grow up. I'm voting for President Trump because I value free speech both on the internet and in the workplace and in my personal life. I should have the right to my own opinions, just like I believe you should have the right to your own opinions, even if I don't disagree with you. I agree to your right to have an opinion. Okay, I digress. And the last thing I want to touch on here is health. What's really cool is RFK Jr., who was a lifelong Democrat, is now joining Team Trump to address the greatest issue of this generation in America, and that is health. It can be argued that we are literally the most unhealthy generation that has ever lived. I mean, if you want to talk about the fake food and just the gluttonous society we live in, or vaccines, or pharmaceuticals, or microplastics, or your stagnant lifestyle where you're not getting exercise, genetically modified foods, dependency on convenience meals, the list goes on and on and on and on. We are the most diseased generation, and this needs to change. I feel a burden of God to pursue health and healing, not just for myself, but for others around me, spirit, soul, and body. And so I love that the Trump administration is actually brought RFK Jr. along, and that they are actually going to be going after some of these major issues, especially what is wrong with our food and what's wrong with our healthcare system. Y'all, we need this. Too many of our people are dying early because of preventable diseases, and it's time to address it. Amen. All right, so just in closing, you know, you can say what you want about President Trump, but he loves our country and he wants to see America restored to her greatness. So to summarize, I am voting for Trump because of these issues. I am voting for health. I'm voting for protection of women and children and parental rights. I'm voting for secure immigration and to have a secure, strong border. I am voting so that we can get this national debt crisis in order and fix our budget and our economic system. I am voting to prevent World War III for as long as possible. I'm voting to stop the spread of globalism and socialism. and stop this woke ideology from taking over our country. I'm voting to have, I already said, stronger borders to maintain the security and culture of America. I'm voting for maintaining capitalism, and I'm voting not just for the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, but I'm also voting for the First Amendment, personal liberties, speech, religion, assembly. So I charge you to vote. Do not be one of the Christians, the 41 million Christians who's not planning on voting. Get out there and vote. Don't vote for your favorite Valentine. Vote for the country you want to live in. Vote for your children and your children's children. Take the responsibility and do what you have to do. Let's save America and let's make America great again. All right, if you guys like this video, I ask you to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. I'm gonna be starting to take my channel in a different direction. I know I haven't made as many videos of late, but just moving and some life transitions, I've just had to get settled into the new season. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this video and if you would like to see more content like this. Okay, I love you guys. Bye.